everyone, it's Olivia from Girlybunches, and in this week's video I'm going to be showing you how to do the basket weave stitch. Now, I have done a video on this previously, but I had to take it down unfortunately, because even though back in the day when I was buying some copyright free music, it turns out it wasn't copyright free, so I had to take that video down unfortunately. So I'm redoing my video. I'll probably put a little insert here of my old video. You can really customise this the way the pattern works. You can make these vertical stripes thinner or wider, or make the horizontal stripes thinner or wider. It really is up to you. It's a really versatile pattern, and as you can see, it looks great from both sides. So we like those sort of projects and stitches, don't we? So I'm going to get on and show you how I made this basket weave stitch. Right, so I'm going to be using some double knit yarn here, and I'm using a 4mm hook, and with my 4mm hook and my double knit yarn, I've started off with a base chain. Now your base chain will need to be multiples of 8 plus 4. Okay, so anything, so if you're working in a flat piece like this, you want multiples of 8 plus 4. So here I have 28 stitches, which is so it's 3 multiples of 8 and then 4 extra stitches. Okay, so we're going to start off with treble into the 4th chain from the hook. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our 4th chain, and then we're going to do our treble. So remember, I'm British and I use British terminology, so you may know that as a double. And with all my videos up here and in the description box, I will put a link to a video explaining the difference in terminology. So those first 3 chains there are going to become our first treble. And then what you need to do is just work 1 treble into each of the chains all the way to the other end, and that's all you do for the first row. And I will come back once I've got all the way to the other end. Right, so we have worked all the way across to the other side, and now we're going to do 2 chains, and then we're going to turn the work. So we're now going to work in the opposite direction. Now we are going to work trebles around front and back posts, and I'll come to that in a moment. But and normally we would do 3 chains to replace a treble, but because when we do a treble around a post stitch, so around this treble from the previous row, it shortens the actual stitch, so it won't be as long as these stitches here. So that's why I'm only doing 2 chains, which would be the same as a half treble, before I start working the rest of my stitches. So it's just good to remember that at the end of each row you either want, so you want to start each row with 2 chains, or you want to finish it with a half treble, and that will be on the same for every row that we do. So regardless of what you're doing in the pattern, it will start with 2 chains and end with a half treble. So onto the actual pattern. What we're going to do is we're going to work a treble. So you put the yarn over your hook like you would normally do, and we're going to work this as a front post stitch. So to work a front post stitch, basically we want to push this stitch forward. I'm just going to go over it quite quickly just to show you, but I do have in-depth videos which I will link up here and in the description box down below. And you just put your hook down between those 2 stitches there, round the back, and then back up to the front again, and then you just work your treble like you normally would. So you're not working the stitch into the top of the previous stitch like we would normally do. We would normally put the hook through the top of the stitch. We're actually putting the hook down in between the stitches, around the back, and then to the front, and then working the stitch around that treble, which we're actually calling a post. And as you can see, the stitch is raised, and if I turn it over, you can see we have this detail where the top of the stitches have been pushed back. So this is a front post stitch, a front post stitch where it's lifting the stitch upward. And what we need to do is 4 of those. So I've done 2. I just need to do 2 more. If you're new to crochet, just take it a bit slowly. It's a bit different, but actually it's quite easy because you're not having to put your hook into anything. You're just putting your hook in between the 2 stitches, around the back, and then up the front. If I just turn that over, you can see what I mean by around the back. And there's my 4 stitches. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the next 4 stitches are going to be worked around the back post. So again, put the yarn over the hook, and this time we're going to come in from the back, in between the stitches, across the front, and then down around the back again. So you can see now that before you could see the hook going across, but now you can't see the hook because it's on this side. So you just pull, so you put the yarn over the hook and you pull it through, and now you're going to finish working the stitch around the back. Can you see the difference now that we have with the stitch? But if you turn it over, it looks like we've worked a back post stitch here, and it looks like we've worked a front post stitch here. Okay, so it's going to be the reverse on the reverse side, so the reverse effect on the opposite side. That's probably a better way of saying it. So we need 3 more of those. So again, yarn over the hook, in between those stitches, those trebles from the previous round, up across the front, and then down in between the next 2 stitches. Grab the yarn, pull it through, and you're going to be working around the back here, so you just need to tip it down if it makes it easier for you, and you just do your treble as normal. And I'll do that 2 more times, from the back, across the front, down the back, grab the yarn, and then work the treble, and then 1 more time. And this one's probably a little bit more tricky because you have to pull it across the front of that other stitch, but it's, you know, just a little bit of practice. So there we go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 front post stitches worked, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 back post stitches worked. And if I just turn it over, you'll see how they look, the reverse of what we've just got on this side. So we need to finish the row doing 4 front posts, 4 back posts, 4 front posts, 4 back posts. So I'll start with my front posts again. So I'm going to go down from the front, across the back, and then up again. And again, we need to do these in groups of 4 stitches. There's my next 4 stitches, and then back post. So we come in from the back, across the front, down the back, grab the yarn, pulling it across the front, you can just see the top of the hook going there, round to the back, and then completing the stitch around the back of the post. And there's 4 of those completed. So now we're going to do front posts, and then we should have 5 stitches left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is great because now we're going to do 4 back post stitches. Sorry about my squeaky chair. And then on the very end stitch, we're just going to do that half treble that I said about at the beginning, just into the top of that 3rd chain there. And you just finish that off like so. So if I just have a little look at what we've got here, it's probably a little bit difficult to see because we haven't really got the pattern going, but you can see we've got raised stitches there, and the back post stitches are raised on the other side. Chain 2 and turn your work. So we need to do exactly the same thing as we did at the start of this round. So we're doing 4 front post stitches, and here again you just want to see where your stitches are, and you just put your hook down in between them. You can have a look on the back to see where you're going, and just work 4 front post stitches. So we're now working our third row, but the pattern excludes the very first row that you did. So we will be doing 3 rows where we start with the front post stitch, and then once we've done the 3 rows here, so we've actually got so 1, 2, 3, so I need to do another row of this front post stitch where we start with the front post, and then when we go to do the 5th row in total, but the 4th row in the pattern, we will start with a back post stitch. I know that sounds confusing, and I will explain what I mean when we get to it. Okay, so I've done 4 front post stitches. Now I need to do 4 back post stitches there. So you just put your hook from the back across the front, grab the yarn, and then work the stitch. So we want 4, so that's 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to repeat this to the end. So that's front post, back post, and I'll come back to you when I get down to here. There we go, I've completed the row, and I just want to do my half treble at the end of my row. So into the top of that 2 chains from the previous row, I'm just going to do a half treble, which you may know as a double crochet, I think. Half double crochet. Okay, so I've got 2 rows of my pattern completed, and this first row was a starter row, so you don't include that as part of the pattern. So I've got 1, 2 rows done. I just need to do 1 more row where I do 2 chains, turn, and I'm going to start with 4 front post trebles. Exactly the same thing as I did for the last 2 rows. Just 1 more where I start with 4 front post trebles, and then I start working my 4 back post trebles. Remember to take your time just to see where your 2 stitches are, and you come up between them across the front and down the back, grab the yarn and work your treble. Okay, so I'm going to come back once I've got to the end of the row, but you can start to see the pattern forming quite nicely there. So I've completed my row, and as you can see, it's really taking shape. So if I hold it this way, you can see what I mean about the stitches being front post and back post. So you've got this sort of definite wiggle, which is exactly what we need. And now what we're going to start doing is doing the opposite of what we've done for the last 3 rows. So remember, this first row is our starting row and doesn't count as part of the pattern. Then I've worked 3 rows here. So it's 1, 2, 3, and there's the stitches from the very first row. I've done 1, 2, 3 rows of stitches on top of this row, which is our first row, so we've got 4 altogether. So the 5th row will now start doing the reverse of what we did here, so that we get the effect of the basket weave. So chain 2 to start off your row, 1, 2, and turn. So we started off with front post. Now this time we're going to start off with 4 back post stitches. So you're just going to put your hook in between that last stitch that you did and the treble, if I get that to focus, and you're going to go down, grab the yarn and work the stitch at the back of the stitch below. And then again, because we want 4 of these, and now we're getting the opposite effect, where it's pushing the top of those stitches forward to give us those lines that go across here, which give us the effect of a weave. Okay, so I've done my 4 back post stitches. Now I'm going to do 4 front post stitches. So down from the front, up through the back, and work the stitch. And again, we want 4 of those. And now you can see how this goes across and that goes over, give us that lovely basket weave effect. So again, now we need to do 4 back posts, so up through the back, across the front, and work the stitch around the back. 4 of those again. And now we're going to work 4 front posts. And then we're going to work 4 back posts. And then we're going to finish off with 4 front posts. So before we were ending the row with 4 back posts, and now we're ending the row with 4 front posts. So you can just see it's alternating. And then a half treble into that second chain, like so. Okay, so I've done 1 row and we need to do 2 more rows of that, where we start with back posts and finish with front posts. So 2 chains, turn, and then we're going to do our back posts. And then we're going to do 4 front posts. So I'm going to finish this row, which is my second row, and then I'm going to do a 3rd row, and then I'll come back. There we go, that's my 3rd row of my second phase of the pattern completed. So I've done 3 rows of the pattern here, and then 3 rows of the reverse of the pattern, and then you would just continue now working these first 3 rows again. So chain 2, turn, and then you'll work front post stitches this time, and same principle as before. You work 4 of those and then do 4 back post stitches, and you would do 3 rows of that where you start with the front post stitch. Okay, I'm just going to do a few more rows and I'll be back in a second. So there we go, I've completed a few more rows of the pattern. As you can see, it's really textured and lovely. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'd love it if you gave me a thumbs up if you did. If you didn't, or you have any questions, why not pop me a comment in the comments box down below, and I will do my best to get back to you. Obviously, I don't get back to people straight away because I get quite a few comments, but I do try to go through them every couple of weeks, sort of clear all the comments across all my videos. So eventually you will get a hello from me. I do try to do that. Yeah, so if you haven't subscribed, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That'd be cool if you did. And I will see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.